Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my spoiler discussion for Durarara 3, or Durarara 2 Season 3. And just to start things, I'm actually going to start at the very end. The last two episodes just like were insane. Because Mikado, like the whole thing, just the whole series for me was freaking out over Mikado, and it was like, he's being tricked a little bit, but then he's not being tricked because he like the end of the first season he like stabs Aoba in the hand. Is like, this is our contract, and he gets all crazy and stabs him, and then he's like, oh perfect, and he's like, oh, let's bandage that up. So it's like, I don't know what's happening. He's like a crazy serial killer almost, where he's like super angry one second, super happy and nice the other, and then season two, it kind of expands, and that just keeps going, and then we get to the point where he explains to Celti like, oh, I'm gonna like destroy everything, pretty much is his plan. It's like he has officially lost it. And then we get him in this ending, and it was just insane. Like, they have the stuff where he gets the gun um, from the mob and everything from the Yakuza. And it's like, all right, they gave him a gun. I knew that was bad. As soon as they showed the gun, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. This is crazy. They talk about, because during the narration, and I remembered this during the, I think it was the episode before the last, and it was like, who knows how he's going to use it. Maybe he'll use it on someone. Who knows? Maybe he'll use it on himself. And that ends up happening at the end of the episode. And it was just crazy. It was like, wow, this is nuts. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. This is insane. And technically, I mean, I was still a little confused admittedly because they were talking about how the gun wasn't the right gun. So I'm assuming he didn't actually use the handgun. Even though he said he did, he was like, I used the gun. But I don't know. I was trying to figure that out. I was like, so did they give him the handgun or did they give him the little arm thing? Because I'm like, I'm pretty sure the smaller bullets would have been from the little arm gun thing. But then he was like, oh, I already used this gun before. And that's when they show, like, oh, the cop's house and the boss's house and stuff. So I'm admittedly still currently confused because I was like, maybe they did it that way. And he was talking about the little thing. But then it was like, oh, the bullets were too small. And that's what I was like, okay, so why did he even say he used the gun? I guess the whole point was that he was lying anyway because he was about to kill himself. So I guess he did. It didn't matter. He wanted everyone to think that he was the one that did it anyway. But of course they found out the bullets were different, so they would have figured that out real fast. But he didn't know that. I guess he wasn't thinking about that at the time. He was clearly losing his mind. He was about to kill himself. He probably wasn't really thinking ahead as much as he thought he was. So I guess I finally just figured that out. But just the ending and how everything played out is like, Masaomi is dealing with the one dude, I can't think of his name, but like the ladies' man, who is really awesome. I like that guy's character. I forgot about him when I was talking about like my favorite new characters. He's definitely up there. My three favorites are Verona, him, and the guy who knows Henri, who was like in love with her mom. But he was just crazy. Like, they have this fight and stuff, and I didn't realize it when he fought against Shizuo. It's like, okay, he can take a punch from Shizuo. That's nuts. But he moves around like Shizuo does. Like, he jumped off that building when they had the fight. He jumped off the parking structure, and he just hit the ground, and he was fine. He just got up. And I loved how they did all the fight scenes in his last couple episodes where he was, like, rolling and flipping and stuff, and he was always, like, grabbing his hat out of the air. When he was fighting Masaomi, the hat fell off and landed on the guy's hand, and they're looking around, and then he ran past him and was like, thanks, and picks up the hat. So he was just crazy. I didn't realize he was that tough. I knew he was like, he could take a punch. I didn't know he was like Shizuo superhuman, where he could just drop off a building, and it was like nothing. Like Simon did that one time in the first series, and he just dropped down because he was delivering food on like the top floor. He's like, all right, I'm just gonna hop down here and help these kids out. So he's just added to that list of like crazy superhuman human characters, and they really displayed that during that fight when he jumped off the building, and I just didn't realize it until that point. But that was pretty crazy, and they go through all this stuff, and yeah, everything's supposed to be working out fine, and then it's like, alright, there's some weird stuff going on in the city, because the crazy teacher guy comes back. He seemingly, which I thought was a great twist at the end, he seemingly had taken over the one girl's abilities, and was talking about like, oh, the last person that scratches someone is the one who's in control and stuff like that. and he found out that it could be done through teeth and fingernails. So he has all these people taking over, and he believes that he's controlling her this whole time, and she just wants to be with him. And I thought Seiji had a weird relationship with his sister and the other girl, but I swear to God, I did not realize how crazy the teacher and the girl were, because he wants, like, it was just crazy. Like, I realized this at the end, because when he came back and he kidnapped her, I was so confused. I was like, why did he leave during that one episode? Why did he flip out and take off from her? And I realized at the end, he wants her, but he doesn't want her to want him, in a sense. Like, and it was really crazy. It was like, if she's madly in love with him, it flips him out and he wants to take off. But when she's like under mind control and does whatever he wants, then he wants to do everything with her. And it was the craziest thing. I was like, this makes no sense for this guy. He's just insane. But then they, they end up together in the end, and I don't know if she was gonna chop him in the pieces or what, but it was just crazy. I was like, I thought Seiji had a weird thing going, but that's just insane. Like, he freaks out when she wants to be with him, unless he has complete control over her and she doesn't feel anything, basically. That's when he wants her. And it was just crazy. I was like, this doesn't make any sense, but I love it. It just makes him crazier. So he's got all these people in the city, everything's weird, and then Masaomi realizes that Mikado actually was going to meet him. He's on the roof with him, and Mikado pulls the gun out on him, and he's going to shoot him, and it was just crazy. I was like, he's going to kill Masaomi for what? Like, it just didn't make any sense. And then he gets beat up and stuff, and he shoots Masaomi in the leg, and he's about to kill himself, and when it ended there and, it went off, I was like, I don't see how this could possibly work. Like, I don't see how he could possibly have survived that, because nothing else was happening. It was just them. There, Celty was nowhere to be found, because she saved Shizuo from the explosion, and it was just a bunch of craziness. Like, it was just insane. And Shizuo and Izaya were fighting and jumping through buildings and crap, and Izaya gets screwed up, especially when he gets distracted at the end, and both his arms are broken, and he's almost killed, but it finally ends. And it was just nuts, everything happening all at once, and then it starts up at with the final episode, and I was freaking out. Like, I like teared up when that episode happened. I was like, he killed himself, and he for like insanity, because he wanted to make the dollars so bad that there wouldn't be any dollars. There couldn't be bad dollars, but there couldn't be good dollars. There just would be no dollars, and it was just the craziest solution ever. And he like lost his mind. It was insane. And I loved it. I just loved the way everything played out. I was freaking out, like, how is this playing out? They go through the episode, and then the black Celtic like stops everything in the city, and I was like, she saved him. Like, that's how he survives. And it goes to it, and she stopped the bullet just in time. And I was still thinking before that happened, I was like, so this could be how he doesn't die. But I was like, I mean, I didn't know, because it's a bullet. It's like, it only activates when it's literally touching something. And I was like, I don't know if she could still make that work, but fortunately she does end up saving him. And we also find out that she didn't lose her memory. She was acting like she did, and she was just going to take off because she didn't want to like hurt anybody, because she had gotten all her memories back about before she became like the Headless Rider. And that was crazy, because as they were doing that, when she like first got her head, and the first person she runs into is Izaya. And she's like, who are you, human? I was like, oh, that's super sad, because then she won't... I was thinking about Shinra the whole time, like, he's going to find her, and then he's going to be, like, depressed and alone and stuff. And then they had the thing where the woman, of whose name I can't remember, who has, like, the super crazy version of Saika, who has, like, just the most insane amount of control, which we find out that Henri can do, which if the show does get renewed, I would hope to see Henri gain more control and she's able to do all that crazy stuff too, because that would be awesome. But she mentions like, oh, I love you because of your will to love the Headless Rider. I've fallen in love with you. And I was like, maybe they'll do it where they actually end up together, because Celty really won't have her memories. But I love the way they did that too, where she was acting like she didn't have the memories, and they had it, and I just love the way they did it. And this was one of the earlier things. I think this was maybe 4 episodes before before it was all over, so 3 episodes before the actual finale. And they were doing the flashback because it was getting to the end of the Shizuo Izaya fight, and they had the flashback with their interactions with Shinra, and they did that again. And it's like, what'll happen when you die, and what do you leave behind? And it's like, oh, Shizuo It's like he's like a lion or a tiger that'll leave his skin behind it. It was like he was using a phrase, and it's like he'll leave behind this crazy legacy and all this stuff. And that's what had me freaked out, that they were actually gonna kill Shizuo, and especially when he got trapped with the gas and stuff, and then he escaped by going down. And then they did it where they were talking, where Shizuo was talking with Shinra, and it was about Izai and what how everything would play out, and how what Shinra would leave behind. And I think that may have actually still been with Izai, actually, what he would leave behind. And it was just crazy. And he was like, when he was talking with Shizuo, was like, at some point, if things are really crappy, you're gonna have to, I'll be in love with this woman to the day I die or whatever. And he's like, well, eventually, I'd have to, kick your ass for her or whatever. And I love how they kind of brought that back around. He's like, you have to kick my ass into orbit then. And it was just really good. And like Shinra's like, everything that she was saying is like, I know you still have those memories and stuff like that. And I love the fact, because at first I thought it really was just Shooter, and it was that she didn't remember them, but Shooter did, because Shooter technically isn't her. Like, Shooter, has its own memories. But, we get the scene, and Shizuo just launches Shinra up in the air, and then we actually see them walking, and Celtine's like, I know, but I have to leave them behind because I don't want to hurt them. And I was like, holy crap, she completely remembers. And then when he flew past her, was just like, hey, and he like flew past. That was one of my favorite scenes because it was so funny, and she just flipped out and was like, I have to save him. And I just loved that. I thought it was really good. And he actually like, separates her from the head, which doesn't end up actually killing her, which was something I talked about before. But it was really good. I just love the way all that stuff played out. Like, I love the way they did it. Really crazy, the Mikado stuff. And then, in the finale, everything seemed fine. She saved him and all this stuff, and then they're, jumping back and forth. And they're walking down the road, and then the freaking teacher comes out, and he's there to stab, I think he was there to stab Henri because of the Psyche thing. And Mikado gets in the way, and he just keeps stabbing him. Like, when he stabbed him once, I flipped out. And then he was like, you're always in the way. And he kept stabbing him. I thought for sure he was dead. I was like, he stabbed him once, and that was bad enough. It scared me. But then he kept stabbing him, and all his blood was pouring out. And then they skipped from that, and it freaked me out all over again. And I was like, how is he, like, he has to be dead. And it blew my mind how they did that. And I loved it. And fortunately, of course, he survived, and everything kind of worked out fine with them. And Oba got a little pissed because the red-haired guy, was there to be like, oh, don't manipulate Mikado and everything. He's like, oh, we got, what we wanted. And like I said, if we get a Series 3, maybe he'll be kind of taking over the Blue Squares again, and they'll, try to be getting more and more people back to become a big group again. And maybe we'll have to see if they do something crazy where Mikado joins Masaomi as a part of the Dollars, or as a part of the Yellow Scarves, maybe, and, they do it that way. But I'm sure the Dollars might still continue. As crazy as everything was, who knows? I mean, people will still want to be in it. I mean, his whole plan was like, oh, no one will want to be in it because it would get, the Yakuza involved. But I'm sure there'll still be people that want to do it. So if this, the show does continue and we get a Series 3, we might still see the Dollars, and Mikado might have to pick it up all over again and figure out, how do I officially make this happen? And maybe he outs himself to everyone, because a ton of people knew by the end, because of Izaya and some of the other little things going around, that Mikado was the leader of the Dollars. But of course, not everybody knows that. So maybe he'd do that eventually at the end, and it's like, I am the one who made the Dollars, and this is what it was meant to be, and, this is why all this other crazy stuff happens, because I was trying to erase all the bad seeds, so that my friends and I could, finally be together again. So maybe they'll do it that way, but I don't know. I mean, it's still, they got the mini gang war with the Yellow Scars and the Blue Squares and the Dollars, and then, and I mentioned this a little bit because I couldn't talk about it, but the stuff with the Yakuza and all that stuff going on, the Awakusu and everything, like, well, really it's just the Awakusu and the group I still can't remember, the Misu thing, which I said last time. I just can't remember the name of that group. But we still don't really have much going on there. I felt like there was still a big war that was meant to be had that just still hasn't happened yet with the Yakuza. and it might be too late because the dollars and the Yakuza were getting involved. Like they gave Mikado that gun, and the redhead guy goes and talks to the dude like, oh, your plan was to have him, give him the gun and have him go nuts, so you can kill him and then have your own replacement take over, so you have another, mini racket. And it's like, oh, that's not a big deal, but it actually is because you're making a bunch of money, in secret. So I feel like there's still a big gang war to, be had there. And I mentioned two characters that don't really show up at all this season, and one of them does, and that's Shizuo's brother and his girlfriend. So we have, the superstar character, he didn't show up at all. And then we have, Hollywood, the serial killer. She showed up at the very end, when her cousin, the woman who controlled Psycho, they're like distant cousins or whatever it was. They explained the woman's backstory. When she saved her, that was like the one scene that she was there, and it's like, oh, I should atone for being, Hollywood and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, they weren't in this season at all. I thought that would be a big deal, and them being together and her talking about how she was this serial killer and all this other stuff. So I feel like that's something they'll probably save for Series 3. They would kind of have to, because I feel like that really didn't go anywhere this series, because it was like, holy crap, there's another supernatural element where this character has like crazy super strength and she can heal really fast, which we got in the last, or I think that was like even, that may have been the last season where they talked about her backstory and how she was kind of experimented on, and she could heal really fast, and she's got literally like the blood of something different in her system. And I would assume, the woman, I want to say her last name is Jagadi, and she kind of has the same thing, because when she sits with Henri and the other girl, it's like, technically speaking, that's a hard question to answer if I'm human or not. And I guess it's because they're both from the same bloodline. They have that, whatever that weird thing is in their DNA that makes them so tough. And we haven't seen that from her where she got actually wounded, but of course we saw it from Hollywood. So I feel like that should come back in the next series, and I would love to see that come back. And even if people, maybe if people found out, or even if they didn't, because she's a pop idol, so I don't know, that may be too grand scale for Durarara, but if she came back and maybe tried to be like a hero or something, I thought that would be an interesting thing. If she tried to go from having been the killer to being an actual hero, maybe that would have turned out differently. Maybe that would just be interesting to see, I don't know. But, they weren't really in it at all, which was fairly unfortunate, but it was still really good. Like, I certainly enjoyed this season. We didn't really see the young girl in this season at all either. She was another character that didn't really show up. The twins were technically in it quite a bit, but we didn't actually ever see them. They were like in the chats like quite a bit, especially in like the last couple episodes. They were like the only ones there just talking back and forth. And I was like, man, I noticed that especially at the end, because there was just them in the chat, and I was like, huh, this is the only time we really see them. Like, they showed up a bunch in the first season. Maybe even then it wasn't really a bunch, but they showed up there, and they showed up a little bit in the last season. And then this season it was like the least amount of time we really got to see them. It was mostly through the chat and everything. But, maybe we'll get to see a little bit more of them, and maybe they'll have more stuff between them and Aoba, because he's like, hey, stay away from all this craziness. Things are, might get nuts. So we might see a bit more of them in the next series as well. But ultimately, it was just an amazing finale. Like, the last two episodes, the last like 3 or 4 episodes were just great, when everything came together, and Shinra gets kidnapped, and Celti just goes nuts and like destroys the apartment and stuff, and she takes off, and she's just this cloud and stuff. Like, that was crazy to see. Like, that was nuts. She just went crazy. Like, she went nuts, and then everyone's like, I don't know what's happening. Things are going crazy in the city. All these people with the red eyes. They have to figure out the psychic stuff. Kadota leaves the hospital. I can't remember the girl's name, but she's like trapped in the city and stuff like that. So all this just insanity was just had, all this crazy stuff was going on, and it was just really good. Like, I love the way everything played out, and we still have this stuff with the Yakuza and Izai and whatever he's still planning to have, go crazy in the city, because I'm sure there's something else, and I'm sure he won't die, because he was like, if I'm gonna die, I want to be away from that monster, meaning Shizuo. So I'm sure he'll be fine, and he'll be back to his manipulating ways. I highly doubt this would happen, but I don't know. Maybe I'd love to see Shizuo, or not Shizuo, but Izaya and Aoba kind of team up. I don't know why they ever would, because just very different scales. But they finally met in that episode. I think it was, I think it was the episode before the finale they officially made. It may have actually been the finale. And I was like, they finally saw each other because they're the same character. They're both a-holes and I hate them. But they're the same person. And even Oba mentions it in the episode. And, like, he always hated, being considered, like, when Shinra first meets him, Shinra and Celti, he's like, you're just like Izaya. And he hated being compared to him. But when they're finally in, like, the same location, he's like, we're two of a kind. And I was like, he actually admitted it, and I was kind of surprised by that. But I liked it too, because it was like he truly does know his role, and he knows how he is as a part of this, this little world that they have in Ikebukuro. But great series, of course, great final season. It's just like, the first series, just the final arc of it and everything was just perfect. It was just even better because we got 2 full seasons to lead up to this official full 12 episode final arc too. So it was just phenomenal. I hope we get, a series 3 and we get to see kind of a final conclusion, especially because I think at this point, I think, the minor thing will probably be the Hollywood stuff they can deal with. Of course, Celti having her head and kind of continuing on with, that. And then, the Yakuza stuff and maybe the, small gang as well. There's still stuff that I can tell that they could, definitely go into. But I think at this point, the Yakuza is like the big thing. That could be like the main plot for the next season. But no matter what they do, which I hope they do something. I hope we get something from it. I'm very excited. I certainly love this one. It's hard not to consider it my favorite just because it was the culmination, and it was a great ending too. It wasn't like, amazing lead up and all this stuff, and it was like, eh. It was an amazing finale. Like, it was, it started perfect and it did end perfect as far as I'm concerned. So, it did not let me down in any way whatsoever from all the build-up that it had. It still had an epically amazing payoff. So, really love this. Can't wait for it to come out. I'm sure, I believe the first 2, or maybe all 3, because I watched it on Netflix, of course, which is my reviews are so late for it. So, I believe it might all already be out on, like, Blu-ray and DVD. So, probably have to pick it up fairly soon, get the first series as well, and then, see what happens if we get a series 3 and everything like that. But definitely want to know what you guys thought about this final season, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. If we do get a series 3, what would you like to see? Like I said, for me personally, I would love to see them do something with the Hollywood character. I can't remember her name. I believe her last name is like Hajiribe. I believe that's her last name. But I'd like to see her come back. Of course, I'd love to see the conclusion to the Yakuza stuff, because I felt like that didn't, really complete like it was meant to. Like, Izai didn't really get to have that play out the way he really wanted it to. And it was chaotic, but it was mostly chaotic because the teacher came back and he, like, turned everybody into zombies pretty much. That was the only reason that was so crazy, because it really would have just been, we have 2 characters talking. Celti still would have, gone crazy even outside of Izai's plans and stuff. But I don't know. There was just a lot there. There's still a lot that I feel like they could, really do. And I'd love to see where things go from here with our trio and kind of where things keep going. I'm kind of looking at my time because it's going to cut off on me. But I would love to know what you guys want to see. And like I said, what you guys thought about this season. So spoilers, all in the comments. Anything you guys want to put. Definitely want to hear about it, so please comment below, let me know. And of course, thanks for watching.